Welcome to Filmability. My name is Joel Fisher and I'm the author of Filmability, A History of Disability Cinema, which you can find on Amazon in Kindle paperback. Welcome if this is your first time listening. Welcome back if it isn't before. This week's film is At First Sight, a romantic drama about a blind massage therapist whose girlfriend convinces him to get sight restoring surgery. At First Sight is directed by Owen Winkler, a director best known for Guilty by Suspicion with Robert De Niro about the McCarthy trials, and early internet identity theft thriller The Net with Sandra Bullock. After At First Sight, he went on to direct The Lovely, the Cole Porter biopic with Kevin Kline, and Home of the Brave with Samuel L. Jackson and 50 Cent about soldiers struggling to adjust after returning home from Iraq. At First Sight is written by Steve Levitt in his first and only screenplay, and it's based on a story called To See and Not See by Oliver Sacks MD, which is based on a real couple called Cheryl and Barbara Jennings, with Cheryl going through the same thing as the blind character in At First Sight. Dr. Sacks' work has also inspired such films as Awakenings with Robert De Niro and Rob Williams, and The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, which is a TV movie with Frederick Westcott and Patricia Hooper. As usual, I'll be talking through the entire plot of At First Sight, so I suggest that you watch it now before continuing with the podcast. You can find it on Amazon Prime in the UK, and you can rent or buy it on digital or in physical form. So without further ado, let's get on with the film. Okay, so the film starts out with an icy lake as the sun rises, and the camera pans over the snow to a man with dark glasses putting on his shoes and gloves, and as the camera pans over to his face, he feels the sun in his skin. This is Virgil, and he's played by Val Kilmer. In the city, a woman is asking about having time off. Her friend encourages her to enjoy her time away from work. This is Amy, and she's played by Mira Sorvino. She says that she's good with directions, and the next shot she's on a long, dark road, and she's lost. She gets a map out, and suddenly sees the sign of where she's supposed to go. At the hotel, she's shown a list by the receptionist of the things that she can do to relax. It's like an itinerary of things to do to relax, and there's a schedule. She says that all she wants to do is to stay still and relax, asking if somebody can give her a massage. She books an appointment and goes up to the room. At the massage parlour, she hears enjoyable noises coming from the other room. A woman comes out saying she's going to get a divorce because she enjoyed the massage that much. As she goes in, Virgil's voice asks her to take off her clothes, and he tells Amy to get into bed. She can't see him yet, and although she's laying on the table, she's talking about her life with him as he's massaging her. But he just, in the nicest way, he tells her to just enjoy the massage and they don't have to talk. As she relaxes, it seems all the emotional tension from her life is leaving, and she starts to cry. Virgil suggests that they stop, and he gives her a tissue, but she says it's okay and they keep going. She falls asleep though, and Virgil decides to leave her to sleep, blowing out a candle before he leaves. The next day, Amy's in the foyer and goes to see Virgil, chasing after him until they get to the car park. She talks about seeing him skating earlier, and after seeing his stick, she suggests that he might be a good hockey player. A bus arrives, and she holds out her hand to shake, and instead he pats her on the shoulder. But then she realises that he's blind, and Virgil gets on the school bus and leaves. And, this is the first thing. He's carrying a white stick, and he has got dark glasses on. This is the cinema cliche of a blind person, and Amy doesn't twig immediately. It's a bit strange. Anyway, Virgil arrives home and he greets his dog, who's sleeping on his bed. He turns on the TV and he starts talking to his dog, telling him about a woman that he met today, saying how nice her voice sounds and how she smells, and it feels like there's a bit of a mutual attraction going on. His sister Jenny comes in And she's played by Kelly McGuinness, and she surprises Virgil because he didn't know that she was there. He brushes it off by just saying that he met someone new, and they talk for a while, saying that she's going to go next door. As he thinks she's left, he starts talking to the dog again about Amy. In Amy's room, she's got a scarf and she's wrapped it round her head, trying to see if she can move around without being able to see, and she falls over. This is the comical bit, it's sort of supposed to make her seem like a nice person and, ingratiating herself with the audience and things like that. But really, you're not going to be able to experience a disabled person's life just by doing something that they would be doing. You can't sit in a wheelchair for 10 minutes and think, I know exactly what it's like to be a disabled person. Neither can you wrap a scarf around your head and then go, I know what it feels like to be blind. It's supposed to be a sort of funny throwaway thing, but it kind of shows up her ignorance, honestly. There's a knock on the door, and Virgil is there. He apologises, saying that he should have said that he was blind. I'm not sure why he was apologising, but never mind. He admits that he was talking to his dog about her, and says that he thought that she'd like to go out with him so that they could go for a walk and see what they can find. It's a nice moment. They're getting closer, basically. In the street, Virgil is talking about the people in the city, knowing where people are and who's coming to see them, when he's approached by a woman who he knows because she gets all his books in Braille. Amy asks how long he's been blind, and he says it was a congenital cataract disease that left him completely blind by the age of 3. He says he's so blind that he can't even use a sonar like bats do, or sing like Stevie Wonder. He's got a good sense of humour, but it's all the cliches, really. She says that she sees an old run-down building that's across the street, and it looks like a nice place that they could go and be alone. And he asks her to describe the place to him, and she describes it somewhat poetically. And suddenly it starts to rain really hard, and they head for the building. He says he loves the rain because he can feel everything at once, and it's the best way for him to understand dimension. He encourages her to close her eyes and listen to the rain, and she takes his hand and puts it to her face, telling him that she wanted him to know that she was smiling, and they kiss. I mean, what? I mean, even for a romantic drama, there's so much to unpack with this. The rain, it reminds me of Daredevil. It's ridiculous. The face touching thing as well is, again, as I've said, not a thing that blind people do, let alone if a non-disabled person did that to a blind person by putting their hands over their face. It would be really weird situation, and he could tell that she was smiling, I'd imagine, just because of the tone of her voice, I'd imagine. It's very, very silly, and again, it shows that Amy doesn't really know what she's doing when she's talking to a blind person. Later on, though, they're back at the massage table. Amy asks Virgil what his first memory was, and he talks about something fluffy that he saw when he was a child, and that was the last thing he really properly saw. Amy says that she remembers being at a beach with her parents and watches the sunrise over the ocean. Virgil says he doesn't know what a sunrise is, though, and she describes it to him, and he says no one's ever described this horizon to him so that he could understand it. And I mean, really? I can't... I'm not sure I'm going to keep stopping with this, but he would know what a sunrise was. He went to school. He talked to people. He has a social life as such. He knows people, and people appreciate his time. You'd think into adulthood that he would know what a sunrise was. But there we go. He's blind. He's not stupid. he would understand. And, there must have been a science lesson at some point that explained about how the Earth revolves and how the sun comes up and down every day. There are days and there are nights and stuff like that. It's supposed to be a bonding moment, but it really takes me out of it because it treats Virgil like he's an idiot. Anyway, he keeps massaging Amy and it's getting a bit hot and heavy. It's sort of like they want to go further, but they're not going to. And then suddenly the alarm rings to tell Virgil that it's the end of the session. He's being very professional for some reason, despite the fact that they've gone out on a romantic walk and it's gone well, and now he's got her clothes off and she's on the bed, and it's like, no, end of work. I have to stop working now. I have to be professional. Talk about mixed signals. He said he shouldn't be getting close to a client anyway, but he asked her to his place for dinner so that maybe he can give her a massage there as well. So I don't know, maybe he's crossing a boundary, but we all know what they both want, so it's okay. At home, Virgil is chopping some vegetables as the phone rings, and Amy tells him that she has to go to work due to an emergency, but she says that she's going to come back. Virgil seems upset though, and he burns himself on a pan. It is a bit sudden, but I guess we'll see what's happening. At work, Amy's boss, Duncan, played by Stephen Webber, says that she's got a second chance at impressing their new client. It seems that Amy is an architect. I don't know what emergencies architects have, but anyway. He says that she seems better and full of new ideas after her time away, and she says that she met somebody, bringing up that Virgil is blind, and Duncan snorts at the idea of him, and says that she's always liked the challenge. That's why she married him. So she's working with her ex-husband, and he immediately dismisses Virgil because he's blind, and he doesn't think that he can give her what he could have done. Amy's working late at night, and her friend comes over, and she sees that Amy's researching Virgil's disability, and her friend warns her that she doesn't know what she's getting into. Amy says that she feels changed, though, after she met Virgil, and she likes how he touches her, but she says that it's nothing to do with sex. He says it's the massages, and Amy's friend asks if she has a brother. Oh, sorry, I keep doing this with this film, but why is everybody reacting like being blind is something so awful and so distant from anything else? It's supposed to show how Amy is open to Virgil, and she wants him to be who he is, and she wants him to be happy with himself, but I don't know, I'd like to think that if I met somebody, they wouldn't immediately research my disability, because that would suggest to me that they think of me more as a disabled person than they do as a person. In the next scene, Virgil is playing hockey, and Amy comes to visit. He encourages her to get out in the ice, and they talk about her work, and then she comically slips on the ice and he falls down with her, and they lay down together, and she implies that he did it on purpose, and he kind of did. She says that this is where she usually gives him a sexy look, as she often does with men, but she realises that it doesn't matter with him, and he agrees. I'm sort of thinking that she's sexy anyway. And he runs his hand slowly down over her face, and he says that she's very beautiful, and they kiss. And again with the face touching. I mean, to a blind person, not being able to see the person you talk to, you would think wouldn't matter too much to them because they can't see anyway. And you can't get an idea of what a person looked like by running your hand over their face. It would be very strange, and even then you would probably not get an entirely accurate idea of what they look like anyway. So why do it? But later on, they're in bed together, and it's the usual romantic sex scene that you'd see in other movies, kind of like this. And the next day they have breakfast, and Amy has a book out, and she closes her eyes, moving her hands over the page, seeing if she can read the Braille. I mean, she can't read the Braille because she doesn't know how to read Braille, and quite frankly, she's never had the need to do so. So this is again, she's still not quite accepting him for who he is, and she's putting things together and trying to understand his perspective, but as a disabled person and not as a person. She's snooping around, and then she finds an old file with photos which have Braille underneath to tell Virgil what they are, and there's a newspaper clipping with a doctor's face on it, something about sight restoring surgery. Jenny comes in, and Virgil comes in too, and he says that you can smell the fruit that she brought. I mean, I'm not sure that's a thing either. And this is a common misconception. Again, this is an issue. Virgil's not a bloodhound. He can't smell things like an animal. He's a human being. He's been blind for the vast majority of his life. So he would be able to understand things differently to other people because he's grown up without sight. So he's been able to observe things in a different way to everyone else. That's all. He's not doing party tricks, but the way that he's put across, but with talking about the rain and the three-dimensional feeling that he gets when he's around the rain, or being able to smell fruit, it just makes him sound like he's sort of superhuman in some way. But then he moves towards Jenny, and Virgil hits his leg on the table, and Jenny immediately rushes to help him. But he shouts at her, saying that he's okay. Jenny's doting on her brother because he's blind, and although, he's gainfully employed, he's got a skill that nobody else has. And he's very good at it. So he can be employed and do it whenever he wants, and yet his sister still treats him like he's a child, and she just wants him to be safe, and she's almost like a replacement for his mother. Later on, Amy's researching the article that she found in the file earlier on. She goes to see Virgil, who's working out on a treadmill, and she asks him if he could get his sight back. Would he do it? She says that she's called the surgeon from the article, and says that there might be a chance that he could get his sight back. Virgil reacts angrily though, saying that he doesn't need any help. And this is something I particularly want to talk about, because in our world it seems that to a lot of non-disabled people, it seems that being disabled is wrong. I can't count the number of times I've met somebody, and before asking me my name, they've asked me what's wrong with me. I know there's just a curiosity about disability, and I definitely advocate for more education on disability, but this is going about it all the wrong way. Somewhere along the way, due to a number of different factors, people have got it into their heads that being disabled is wrong. When somebody meets somebody who has a wheelchair, walks with a stick, or has cerebral palsy, for example, it's been completely normalised to assume that there's something wrong with somebody just because they're disabled. That makes first impressions really difficult, because before a person gets to know you, then that's all they'll ever see. Amy has met Virgil, and despite initially not realising that he's blind, she goes about trying to find out how to fix his blindness. What she should be doing is accepting him for who he is without question, because having somebody judge you purely because you're disabled is never the fault of the disabled person, and it's always the fault of the person's preconceived ideas. In the street, Amy sees Jenny, and she's talking about the doctor that she called. Amy says that if she was blind, she would want to get her sight back too, if there was a chance. Jenny says though that they have everything they need, but Amy protests, and Jenny says that Virgil doesn't need to go through the tests and surgeries that may give him hope of getting his sight back. Again, it's saying that Virgil's life is worse because he's blind, and it isn't. he does well. But in the back of his mind, I suppose there's a thing where there are doctors who have come to him to help him and say that they can cure him, and the surgery hasn't worked so far. Amy then goes to see Virgil, and he's listening to a hockey match on the radio, and he's getting excited about it. But then Amy turns up, he realises she's there, and he stops. And they're talking about their differences, and he asks about a tree across the road and asks her how far she thinks it is. She says that it's probably a few feet, but he says that he measures distance in how many steps it takes. So basically he's teaching her about how he sees the world differently, and he has to navigate his way around in a way that she can't imagine. But they hug, and it definitely feels like they're made up, because in the next scene they're in bed and Virgil wakes up and he calls out for Amy, but she's sitting by the window saying that she couldn't sleep. She's still thinking about the surgery, and she thinks that Virgil should at least go and see somebody. But she gets back in bed and they go back to sleep together. The next day, Amy sees Virgil come back, and when he gets into the house, he tells her that he wants to go to New York to see the doctor. It seems that Amy's emotional blackmail has worked. Virgil has given in to her and he wants to give it a go. On the way to New York, Amy is describing the city and Virgil is making fun of her driving. And at the clinic, Dr. Charles Aaron, played by Bruce Davison, says that he thinks that it can be done, and that he thinks that it can be paid for by the Institute. So there's a bit of hope for Virgil. Virgil says he's been through this before though, but Dr. Aaron says that medicine has improved over the years and that he doesn't have anything to lose. I mean, if he goes into the operation being blind and he comes out being blind, then what got better? Which is a valid point. They go to Amy's house, and before they go in, they see a little boy. And he asks Virgil if he's blind, and he says that he is. And the little boy went, "Cool," and he just walks off. Which is nice. I love it when kids just sort of accept things like that. It's great. Anyway, inside, Amy shows Virgil around, and he finds a sculpture that she made of herself, but she doesn't like it very much. He then goes to a window and he opens it, but the wind blows all of Amy's papers off of her desk, and as he tries to struggle on the floor to try and pick them up, he says that he's decided to go through with the operation. So it seems like Virgil is looking at the difficulties that he faces being a blind person, and it's finally come to the point where he thinks his life might be better if he wasn't blind. And this is something I think I should highlight, because there are two ways in which disabled people are treated in society. Firstly, there's the medical model, which is that a disabled person has difficulties because of various things such as access and having to do things that other people do because they're disabled. However, the social model says that a disabled person has difficulties because of various things such as access, because the place they are going to and the people they are talking to haven't considered them. At first sight, it seems to be heavily going with the medical model, and constantly reinforcing it by showing that Virgil needs care and is not able to look after himself in case he gets into an accident because he's blind. It gets so bad that Virgil has started to think of himself as a burden, and it's not because of what he thinks will make his life better, it's because of how much better his life will be if he doesn't inconvenience other people so much. In the hospital, Virgil is in the operating theatre, while Jenny and Amy are waiting outside. They come in after the operation to find Virgil in a wheelchair with bandages over his eyes, facing a window. Amy says the doctor said that he did well, and Virgil hears some noises, but Dr. Aaron assures him that it's only a camera crew documenting his recovery. I suppose in the way Virgil's sight is rare for it to happen and rare for recovery and to get his sight back, but it feels a bit intrusive, and perhaps he should have been told before the operation. The doctor then unwraps Virgil's bandages, taking off the gauze pads that are over his eyes, and Virgil slowly opens them. But it's blurry and the light is too bright, and Dr. Aaron asks what Virgil sees, and he says that he isn't sure. He says that he thinks something's wrong and holds his hand to his eyes. And Dr. Aaron tells the camera crew to turn the lights off and asks Amy to get a can from the other side of the room. He gets Virgil to hold the can and to associate it with what he can feel, and he correctly identifies the can. And this is the point where you realise that Virgil is seeing for the first time, but he's not able to fully understand the difference between a physical sight of a person, and he can't quite get all the information together, which is much like how it happened in real life. Outside the room, Dr. Aaron tells Amy that he thinks that the operation was a great success, and he says that Virgil just doesn't understand what he sees, and so he needs to touch things in order to understand what they are. But in the room, Virgil is getting dressed, and he sees somebody on the other side of the room, and he calls out to them and walks over to them. And he gets so close that he ends up banging his head on the mirror because he's seen his own reflection. He then goes to the bathroom and sees himself again, and he still doesn't quite get it. He thinks it's another person. But then Amy is waiting outside, and Virgil gets close to the mirror, realising what it is eventually, and recognising that the reflection is his face. And again, this is like the sunrise. Has nobody told Virgil what a mirror is in his life? And although it may be hard to describe it to somebody who has never seen a mirror, I think he might have got the idea a bit quicker than he did in the film. Jenny comes in and she says that she realises that Virgil knows what she looks like now. And Jenny says that she's worried that Amy won't know what to do and knows nothing about blind people. I mean, she's not wrong. And Virgil says, though, that he's not blind anymore and they'll be fine. Outside, Jenny asks Amy to take her to the car. On the way there, they talk about her concerns, but Amy assures that she's not going anywhere. She says Virgil won't ask for help if he's hurt. He just needs somebody to be there. And this is something that I think I should talk about, because it seems the film is showing people talking about Virgil as if he's a child and he needs special care. In reality, a blind person can be independent, and Virgil is shown cooking, getting dressed and going to work, and pretty much doing the same thing that a sighted person would do. If he were to have gone to a school for the blind, then maybe he would have learned about how to live independently, but he seems to have got a handle on things anyway. It seems that Jenny perhaps is only there to emphasise either how much she thinks that Virgil needs her help, or perhaps how the filmmakers think that blind people are helpless and need the proper care, when in fact the only things that Virgil needs are the ability to be aware of his own surroundings, which he could use a stick or help with his guide dog, learning Braille, which I believe he can do competently, and to be able to stand up for himself, something that the film does tend to ignore. Virgil and Amy arrive at her place, and he's still a bit uneasy about the building because it looks so tall, and he can't quite grasp the size of it, and because he's seeing things and it's sort of overwhelming. He can't even understand what a shadow is on the floor because it's moving independently from his body, and although this may be another case of nobody explained to him about light and about shade and all that. But anyway, and then the same kid from earlier comes along, and Virgil says that it's nice to see him, and the kid laughs and he goes to play because he thinks that Virgil's still blind. They go inside, and Virgil asks if he can see all of Amy, and I mean, I can understand it getting to that point where he can finally see, so he wants to see Amy. I mean, it's not mattered before, but suddenly it matters. So she takes off her dress to reveal her underwear, and he gets up and he kisses her, and he leans in and he takes off her bra, and he tells her that this is what beautiful looks like, and they lay down on the bed and they kiss. At an office, a man is going through Virgil's files, and he says that there's only 20 cases that have been like this in the past 200 years. This is Phil, and he's played by Nathan Lane. He says he can't find his glasses, and he calls for an assistant who brings them to him. He tells Virgil that he's in limbo. He's not quite able to fully realise the world, but he needs time. Virgil says he needs a lesson to help him to adjust. So Phil brings out an apple, and Virgil identifies it. He then brings out a picture of an apple and asks Virgil if he knows the difference. And Virgil says that he doesn't. And then Phil says that his eyes are playing tricks on him. In the next scene, Virgil is moving through the street, looking at things and trying to identify them. And he sees a sculpture, and he's told that it's art. But he doesn't believe it, and he prefers the graffiti on the wall. But Amy says that that's just destruction. I mean, what a snob. They go past a homeless man, and Virgil is upset that Amy went right past him without looking. She says that some things are too sad to see, and he says he wants to see everything. So Virgil is suddenly a virtuous man. He once was blind and now can see, and he wants to take in the world and accept everybody for who they are and not look away because something's too sad for him. Virgil then signs up for the gym, and he's given some forms, but because he's never had to write before, he can't read, so he says that he forgot his glasses and he needs to fill them in at home. But at home he gets frustrated because he can't understand why he can't read, and he still needs somebody to help him like he did when he was blind. Which is a good point, really, because although there are some blind people who do make an effort to write, there isn't really an option for them to read. I mean, unless Braille is available or an audio version, because not all blind people can read Braille, then it would be a bit of a hindrance in some cases. But again, this is the film just showing a non-disabled audience that it's difficult being disabled. At a restaurant, it feels like there's a bit of tension between Amy and Virgil. She says that she's been invited to a party, and he asks if that was all there is on her mind. He asks her if she's finished her sculpture, and she says she hasn't because she doesn't think she's an artist. And then he sees a lobster, and he's never seen one before, so he asks what it is, and he can't believe that somebody would eat something like that. It's sort of showing there's a difference between them, not only in their abilities, but also in their personal taste, perhaps. And it seems like Amy might be growing a bit tired of this. And I mean, it's a case of be careful what you wish for, I think, because Amy was so dead set on Virgil regaining his sight, and he's seeing the world differently, so she's growing a bit tired of having to help him through the world. And I mean, what did she expect? But anyway, at home, Virgil is identifying things with the help of the kid from earlier. I don't know where this kid came from. I don't know how he's just allowed in this person's house. I think he barely knows them. I don't know. It's very strange. It was the 90s. I'm just going to say that. Maybe that was it. But anyway, Jenny comes in and Virgil gives her a hug, and they go outside, and she tells him that their father called and that he wants to see him. Virgil says that he's not ready, and he leaves. But as Virgil leaves, his father comes over to Jenny, and they watch as Virgil goes off back home. Amy comes home to a dark apartment, and Virgil's sitting on the sofa, and he says he forgets about the light sometimes. It hasn't made a difference to him before, so why should it now? That's an interesting little point, but he talks about the party, and he says that he'd like to meet all of our friends. So at the party, it's lively, and somebody calls for quiet and turn off the lights. Amy says that it's a surprise because Virgil doesn't understand what they're doing. And then Duncan comes in and he pretends to bang his head on the glass door, and Virgil asks him if he's blind as well, and Amy says it was just a joke. Maybe this is highlighting ableism or how we just casually do it, but I think, it's just to show that Virgil is still out of his depth. Amy and Duncan are talking later on, and they're getting well, and he goes in for a kiss, and she responds. But then Virgil comes over, and he says that he senses something between them. She mentions a meeting that was in Atlanta, and that they're talking about, and he changes the subject. He asks her why she kissed Duncan, and she says it's just a birthday kiss. He says he doesn't understand her expression, and he's not seen it before. There's a sort of focus on the way that she looks, and that he can't see what people are thinking. But again, he'd been able to hear people's voices his entire life, so he would get an understanding of how somebody was feeling by their voice. But this is what the film doesn't really understand. And then a bit later on, they're doing the YMCA. Suddenly, it seems like a weird inclusion in a party with adults, but maybe that was the style at the time, I don't know. But Virgil doesn't understand what to do, and he gets frustrated, and Amy says it's just a dance, but Virgil says that he thinks that he doesn't belong there. He tries to leave, but as he goes, he hits the glass door, and it smashes. At home, Virgil says that he sees himself in the mirror, and he sees a stranger, and that he saw Amy better when he was blind. She says that she's sorry that not being blind disappoints him, and she goes to bed. And this is the point where Amy really shows her true colours. She's meant to be the sympathetic romantic lead, but her reaction to Virgil's path to seeing the world for the first time has shown that she has nothing but contempt. It may be to show the fairly realistic portrayal of what a couple would go through in such a situation, but the fact that Amy changes her feelings towards Virgil after he has his surgery makes her feel like she has bitten off more than she can chew. In reality, there are plenty of couples who either go through one of them either becoming disabled or going through a period where they recover from surgery or illness, and this only makes them stronger. Taking the character of Amy in the film, it just feels like she wanted the perfect man and was bitter about it when things didn't go her way. Not exactly a couple the audience can root for, and it's ultimately made out that their differences are what drove them apart, and it implies that it's all Virgil's fault. And I'm sure that's nothing to reflect what the real Barbara Jennings would have felt when she was going through the same thing with her husband. Back at Phil's, Virgil arrives and Phil says the kids are great and eager to learn, unlike the adults, sort of referring to Virgil, but he's not quite grasping the world yet. He asks Virgil if he went to a blind school, and Virgil says that he went to a regular school, and picks things up as he went along. But Phil then invites him to a place where he likes to relax himself. So Nathan Lane and Val Kilmer are at a strip club, which sounds like the start of a joke. For some reason they go to a strip club, and talk about the blind leading the blind, because that was the year that Nathan Lane came out publicly. Phil tells Virgil a story about a talent show where a man was playing piano while spinning plates with an arm behind his back. And he says that this expert on piano playing says that it was great, but one day he says he'll learn how to play music. Virgil says that he doesn't know if he'll be able to play music, and Virgil says he just needs to focus. He says that he can see a lot of things, but he needs to be careful not to lose sight of what he wants. So Phil is now a counsellor for Virgil. At a hotel, Amy and Duncan are talking about the meeting that they had with the client, and he offers to buy her a drink and says that the piano player is playing their song. He's not, but he's trying to get her to have a drink with him. In the bar, they're dancing together slowly, and he asks why she gave up on them, and she says that work got in the way, and they go in for a kiss, but she pulls away, apologising, saying that she needs to go home. He asks if it's because she needs to go babysit, and she tells him not to say that, and she leaves. At home, Amy arrives, but the kid tells her that he's gone to the park, and she sees him standing in the middle of the streets, watching as the cars getting closer to him. She gets scared and runs out to him, and he says he was only trying to see what the car looks like as he got closer. So he was trying to understand perspective, that it's the whole thing. Those things are far away, these things are very small, that kind of thing. But to stand in the middle of the road to understand what perspective was is stupid. Virgil is just coming across very stupid, and at this point he is like a toddler. He's out of control, he does what he wants, he's experimenting with things, he wants to see what the world is like, and it's the kind of thing like, if a child sees a candle and a flame, he'll want to go, oh, what does that do? And then he get hurt. And Amy is getting a bit exasperated because Virgil is acting like a toddler. And this is not a reflection on how a blind person would react to the real world after being able to see. It's how the screenwriter has put together how Virgil would see the world, and it's ridiculous. Amy looks concerned, and they sit on a park bench, and she says that she thinks that they're drifting apart. Virgil tells her about his father, but says that he thought he would disappoint him like he had disappointed her, and he says that he always wanted to be a whole, as if seeing is that part that's missing, and she says that she wants him to come home with her. So Virgil has always been blind. He would have grown up blind. He would have understood the world in the way that he is, and no other way. But yet he doesn't think that he's a whole person, and I can tell you that that is not Virgil's fault. That is everybody else around him. Dr. Aaron, in the next scene, is talking through a montage of the different things that Virgil's doing. It's like, well, Virgil's a special case that he's been able to see after so many years, and so they're treating him like a case subject. And Virgil's doing all these different things. He's talking to people, he's going to the gym, and he's skating with Amy. And as they're skating, a woman passes them, and she looks Virgil up and down, but then Virgil sees Amy's own expression, and he doesn't understand it, and she says that it was jealousy. She says that she's going to show him a few of her expressions, and with the last one, she says that the expression means that she loves him. They go home and have sex in the shower, and after that, later on, Virgil's on the phone, and he's talking about his experiences with being able to see, and it seems that Amy's been gone for a while, and she comes back in, and she gives him his tuxedo, saying that they should celebrate. And he sees from her point of view, but his vision is going out a little, and he looks a little concerned, but he hugs her anyway. At work, Virgil is massaging somebody, and again, as it was before, his sight starts to fade. And it's a very dramatic scene. He's losing his sight again. At the hospital, Dr. Aaron is running some tests, and he asks Virgil how long he's been experiencing sight loss. He says it's been a couple of days, and the doctor says that he could lose his sight completely again in the next few weeks. Virgil then makes his way home, bumping into people on the way and looking at his reflection in the puddle. He then goes to see his father. His father's played by Ken Howard, and Virgil asks him why he left and whether it has to do with his disability or whether it was because he gave up on seeing. And his father said that he left because he thought he was a failure, that he had a blind son that he tried to make be able to see again and he couldn't, so he left. But that's all under the bridge now that Virgil can see again. But Virgil says that he's losing his sight, and tells him that he shouldn't have even left because of the effect that it's had on Jenny and his mother. It's a good scene, I suppose. It's showing how his father left, and this is a thing in cinema, in movies about disabled people, that there's absent fathers everywhere and overprotective mothers, and it's just a bit of a cliche. Virgil leaves and finds Amy setting up her gallery. So he goes there and she says that they should go to Egypt, and she calls it a seeing celebration. He says that there is one place that he'd like to see. So, again, the film is going, being disabled is terrible. You should be able to have the world as everybody else sees it, and so being able to see is the best thing ever. Anyway, next they're at a hockey match, and the crowd are all having fun, and Virgil is still struggling with his sight. Things are starting to appear blurry. He goes to get a candy floss, bringing it back to Amy, but he can't find her because he can't see anymore. And he sits down with her eventually when she goes to get him, and he says that this is the fluffy thing that he saw when he was a child. And she smiles because she puts it all together, that she understands that, of course, it would have been candy floss when he was young, because that's what kids are attracted to. They could see sort of light, fluffy, sweet things, and it's nice. But Amy's concerned as Virgil is losing his sight, and she asks him if it's happened before. He tells her that he's going blind again, and she protests, thinking that it might be something else, but Virgil says that he just wants to go home. They leave, and the stadium is now empty. So Amy is still going, I wanted you to see, I wanted you to be like my other boyfriends, and that we could be a couple normally, and I wanted to erase your disability because of my discomfort with it, and I couldn't accept you as you are. But this is what the film is saying, but it's not really doing it properly. At home, Virgil is packing. He says he's going back home to Jenny, and he says he doesn't belong there, and it doesn't work for him. He says that the cotton candy is the one good thing he remembers with his father, and that it's all his father wanted to do was to change him, and he thinks that Amy's treating him the same way. He's not wrong. And he tries to leave, but he knocks over Amy's sculpture. At Jenny's place, Virgil comes back and he greets the dog, and she says that nothing has changed. Amy is working on a sculpture while Virgil is back home, and he's going through books and pictures and sorting through iconic looking pictures that he can't see, and Amy's looking unhappy. Again, this is emphasising how he can't see now, and so there are things that look great pictures, and things that he can't experience. So again, the film is saying he's lost something wonderful, and that he'll never be able to experience things. So being blind must be so much worse than not being blind. But just turning the lights on and off, in the next scene, his sight is a bit blurry, and when Jenny comes in, he says that he wishes that she told him that she was beautiful. He says he can't imagine what she gave up for him, and he wants to thank her and give her life back. She cries and they hug. And I mean, again, every family is different, every situation is unique, but the whole thing that blind people are completely dependent on other people and that they're a burden is just really emphasised in this scene. Virgil is sitting on the porch in the rain, and Jenny comes back out and kisses her on the forehead, and as he's sitting there, the sun rises, and it's very much implied that this is the first time he's seen it. So there's a bit of a book ending with Virgil not understanding what a sunrise is, and then seeing it at the end. And then Virgil is giving a talk on what he wanted to do when he was a kid and how his life changed when he could see. He says we don't see in the metaphorical sense the things that matter, and we don't need eyes for that. But is it really? I don't think the film is saying that at all. It's really saying that it does matter if you can see. And then Virgil is sitting on the park bench with his dog, and Amy comes along and she sits next to him. She tells him that she found out where he was working. He asks where Duncan is, and she says that he's busy working somewhere else. And she says that she liked their time together, and he says that he saw the horizon, not being able to touch it, but saying that it's still worth reaching for. As a metaphor for you, he's such a deep thinker, he's not only good with his hands, he's good with his mind. And then they both stand and hold hands, and she brings his hands to her face, as she did before, and moves them slowly over them. Oh, this film. And then, finally, they walk off, and the credits start to play. Okay, so up next, I'm now giving an idea of what I think about the film, but I'm going to give a more condensed version of what I think and how I think the non-disabled audience would have responded to it. At First Sight is a melodramatic romance where most of the drama seems to come from Amy's lack of acceptance of Virgil's disability. The film is saying that Virgil's blindness is what's holding him back in life, and all he needs is somebody to come along and show him how much better he would be if he wasn't disabled. It seems that the target audience for At First Sight may be lonely women who think that if only I could change him, then they'll have a perfect life. And that not only talks down to the audience, but it undermines Virgil's disability entirely. It constantly feels like Virgil's blindness is the one thing that's wrong with him, and that it needs to be fixed, without ever thinking about whether he likes life or whether people could just treat him a bit better. Instead, Virgil's disability makes him a burden to Amy, who wants to find the perfect man, and to Jenny, who has been looking after him his entire life. Instead, perhaps the film could have shown Virgil regaining his independence while in his relationship with Amy, but everything points to Virgil being in the wrong. Bookending the movie with him losing his sight is something that happened to Charles Jennings in real life, but the ambiguous way it is left makes the audience wonder what happened to them. Did Virgil leave his sister behind and live a fairly independent life? Or maybe him and Amy got back together and she saw him as the whole person that he'd always been. It could also be that Virgil just went back to his old habits, relying on Amy as his carer rather than his girlfriend. Although, the reality is, he never really did that with her at all. Okay, there's not much trivia this week, but I think there are still some things that you might find interesting. Val Kilmer prepared for his role by studying with a sculptor friend of his in New Mexico who had lost his sight in Vietnam. In the film, Val Kilmer is seen admiring a sculpture when he visits Amy's flat, and I'm not sure whether the sculptor friend of Val Kilmer's was an inspiration for a part of the plot, but you never know. For real film fans who like to connect the dots, this film reunites Val Kilmer with Kelly McGillis, and they both starred in Top Gun. Val Kilmer had a reputation for being difficult to work with, clashing with many actors and directors. However, Mira Sorvino said that she loved working with him on the film and found him incredibly easy to work with. Dr. Oliver Sacks, the author of the story on which the movie is based, has a small credited role as a reporter at Virgil's speaking engagement. There have been several references to Val Kilmer in the 90s sitcom Friends, with the most notable being when Ross rented Val Kilmer's jacket that he wore to the premiere of At First Sight. Cast member Joanna De Niro is the daughter of Robert De Niro, who also played a fictionalised patient of Oliver Sacks in Awakenings, and this is the only film in 1999 to have been reviewed on Siskel and Ebert at the movies. I'm not sure why, but let me know. And up next, I'm going to be talking about the real Barbara and Charles Jennings and their story which inspired At First Sight. Born in Bedford County, Virginia, in 1940, at age 3, Charles Jennings became dangerously ill with 3 illnesses at once: meningitis, polio, and cat-scratch fever. His sickness plunged him into a coma, from which he emerged after 2 weeks with paralysed legs and damaged eyesight. When he was 7 or 8, Jennings was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, a progressive, untreatable disease of the retina that causes blindness. By the time he was 10, he could distinguish only light from dark. He attended the Virginia School for the Deaf and the Blind and later the YMCA School of Swedish Massage. In 1991, at the urging of his then-girlfriend Barbara, Jennings visited ophthalmologist Dr. Trevor Woodhams to investigate opportunities to restore his sight. Woodhams suggested surgery to remove his dense cataracts and to determine the true underlying condition of his retinas. Woodhams believed that the removal of the cataracts would return some of Jennings' vision. The surgery did restore some of Jennings' vision. However, he was overwhelmed with visual sensory data and was able to connect with what he saw with his visual memory, which had all but disappeared. The family contacted Dr. Oliver Sacks, a famous neurologist known for his book Awakenings, who, along with other physicians, concluded that Jennings would need to relearn how to identify objects that he could feel and smell by using their visual cues. Jennings' extraordinary journey was featured in the 1995 article in a New Yorker magazine called To See and Not to See, which was by Oliver Sacks, and reproduced in Sacks' book An Anthropologist on Mars. In February 1992, Jennings contracted pneumonia, which led to respiratory failure that deprived his brain of oxygen. After recovering, while he could see some colours and movement, his sight virtually vanished. Jennings reconnected with his future wife Barbara in 1988, after learning that Barbara, a woman he dated 20 years earlier, had since divorced and moved back into Atlanta, Georgia. They were married in 1991. In 1996, Jennings began taking painting lessons and became a painter. His first solo art show was held in 2002 at the Center Street Arts Gallery in Conyers, Georgia, and he died on October 26, 2003. And that's it for this week. Next week we'll be talking about The Accountant, an action film with Ben Affleck about an autistic hitman. If you'd like to contact me, you can do so via Bluesky at bluesky.com/film-ability. You can also email me at film-ability@outlook.com. And if you'd like to make a contribution to the things that I do here, you can find me at Patreon at patreon.com/film-ability. You can also find my book at Amazon on Kindle and paperback called Filmability, A History of Disability in Cinema. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.